AFS Connect is the online portal that these machines communicate to. So you get into that by going and creating a My Case IH account with an email address. Most of you guys probably have one. Through there, you get into AFS Connect, which is kind of the hub where everything's based. So in there, you've got machine data and then agronomic data. It's a really good spot to kind of manage your grower farm field locations and view that information in one hub. So I'm not going to pull it up. We'll just talk about it a little bit and kind of what it does, how you can use it, and what it gets us from a dealership side. So inside of this hub, it's going to be recording in information from the machine as it's running. So agronomic data is going to be pushed through every 30 minutes or every time a task is closed. And then anything else as far as machine parameters are going to come through every minute. So as you're sitting at home, if you wanted to look and see what fuel level is, that's going to be updated about every minute that machine is connected. So the data side of things, that data is pushed through from the tractor into the account every 30 minutes. So any application data, any tillage, planting maps, anything like that that are coming through on the 1200 monitor are going to be pushed through. Hold on. Can you guys hear me okay still? Yes, no, maybe? All right, perfect. So anything that's going to be pushed through from a data side is going to come into that account. One thing that the account does really well is that it manages your field information based on geospatial boundaries. So if you got boundaries in that account, you can go in there and anytime the data is imported, it's going to be put inside that field boundary no matter what you have it named. So this gets rid of a lot of problems we ran into before where somebody names the field with a capital versus a lowercase, or they put in north versus n, or whatever. So if you've got issues with that, when you create the account and put all your field information in there, kind of save that as a master copy, put boundaries around it, and it's going to keep track of that and figure in, okay, well this data took place inside of this geospatial boundary, therefore it's named this, even if it was named incorrectly in the display. Really good spot for that. Also, it's all web-based, so it's identified by your account login, which means if your computer were to get destroyed, lost, damaged, anything like that, that data is still housed in your account. So you go somewhere, somebody says, hey, I need this map from you. Okay, well, I don't have my computer with me. Can I just log in real quick? I'll print you that map and then I'll log out. We'll be done. So really helpful from that perspective as well. We used to use SMS a lot. Some of you guys probably still do. There's still some good uses for it. It's not quite as advanced as an SMS system, but SMS was downloaded onto the computer, something happens with the computer, all that past data is gone. This is all based online. You can have as much information as you want, and you can scroll back through and see years of data. Also, it'll pull in your soil maps. There's some basic information you can do on there as far as creating prescriptions and things like that. Again, not as advanced as SMS. It's free. So, anybody can create the account. From us, as a dealer, what it gets us is the ability to do remote display viewing, something like this, what we're doing here today, where we can see the screen in the tractor. It gets us the ability to see the location. So this is all if allowed by you guys, but you can allow us to see that information so that, let's say a technician needs to come out, you don't have to, well, turn right at blank's old house, and then I think the address is close here, and just go a mile past that. But they can actually get on and see the location if they've been allowed access. It also puts them in what's called our fleet view, which means it's organized by names, and serial numbers are logged there as well. So they can punch on and see that machine, this serial number, pull it up in what's called the smart view for us, which is going to show knowledge articles that are out based on that serial number range, any warranty programs that are available for that, or PIPs updates. It's also going to show any fault codes over the air. So if a fault code comes up on the monitor, it's going to send it into that account, and within about a minute, 2 minutes sometimes, that fault will come through on our end, and if somebody wants to look that up, they can see that fault, click on it, see the procedures, steps, things like that. So really helpful from our end, but again, those are features that you just have to basically turn on for the dealer to be able to use. So other than that, I think we're probably ready to start going over the monitor a little bit.
So where are those features turned on at?
So basically the My Case IH account, you set up your dealer in there. Whoever transfers you the machine from, let's say, our inventory to yours is already going to be set up as your dealer. The only option in there is AFS Connect access, yes or no. So that's gonna get us machine access. Us from a dealership side, we do not have access to any agronomic data through that account. It's just machine parameters.
And that account, if, you know, you're not sure how to set it up or whatever, I'd be glad to help you do it. And, you know, there's a couple steps, you gotta click on an email, and it's very, very, very simple to do, and it's worth the time. Some people are a little bit spooked by it, but you don't have to really use much of it if you don't want to, but it sure comes in handy if we want to try to remote display the tractor. So.
We found the fault codes to be pretty handy from a kind of a precision side. If somebody calls in and says, hey, every once in a while I get this fault code, we can actually log on, click on the fault code, and not only does it tell us what it means, which this new monitor also tells you in the monitor, which is phenomenal over what we used to get where we were trying to look on Ag Talk and see you had an AG 054 code. But it'll tell us that online as well, where we can then click on it, pull up the procedures right away to see what options we have. There's also, with the machines having a factory installed modem, there's a lot of options for remote software updating. We can check things remotely. Through that account, you can send like grower farm field information to the machine so we don't have to type it in, things like that. Another nice use that we found here lately, kind of the past 3-4 years, is with some theft, like GPS receivers. It actually logs those as well, so they're registered to the machine in there. You can add older machines as well by serial number and then assign devices to them. So if there was a problem, like tractor was parked outside and somebody did steal that off of it, you would have a place that the serial number is recorded to the machine so that we can call in and lock that out essentially, just so it can't be used. Anything else we need to go over on that real quick? I mean, it's a nice place for like variety tracking as well. A lot of guys used to use SMS for that. This system allows you to do that too, free of charge. So if you've got planting maps where you're assigning variety, we can export that, put it into the combine monitor through here, and then we can also then log that into with the USB stick to the monitor, and it'll switch varieties as you're going through the field on the combine side. It'll take information from like ag leader, Trimble, precision planting, deer, most monitors. Anything else?
No, just like I said, just remote login. You can imagine with working out of a couple different stores, I might be a couple hours away from you, and even though I've been around this monitor for 2 or 3 years now, there's a lot I don't know, but if I can log on and bubble through it with you, you know, it's better than driving 2 hours and get you back up and running. So it's a really useful tool for us to use, and I think it'll be a good value for you to have. So yeah, like he said, we're remote logged on. No different than, we're hooked to this tractor right now, no different than him sitting here this close to the tractor. This tractor could be 1,000 miles away. Another thing that's kind of useful is if you talk to me and I'm remoted in and I can't quite figure it out, Curtis might want to look at it too, then he could remote in from his place and he can look at it. So even though it's sitting right here, this is how the procedure would work. So I'll crawl in the cab and he's going to tell me what to do.
Try this again here. So the new monitor does a really good job of kind of breaking things down. There is a lot of stuff that's moved. I like the way that's at that one. There is a lot of stuff that's moved. So basically, any fault codes or warnings now are not going to be found on the A-post where they would have been before. The A-post is kind of stationary. It'll beep at you, kind of show you there's an alarm or something you need to look at, but all that information is going to be found on the monitor. So that would show up in the upper left-hand category with the stop sign and that little kind of yield and information button. So if he clicks there, it's going to show us any information here. So a lot of these fault codes are probably coming up when he's updating. Those engine controllers kicked offline, the driveline controller kicked offline. Those are inactive fault codes, so nothing needed to be done now. They cleared themselves. He could just hit clear all right here, but this is just a place that all that's going to be found. So that upper left-hand area up here, those icons will light up too. So the stop sign will turn red if there is a major fault or something. The information button will light up if there is something active as well. Just over to the right of that is the down arrow with a pause button next to it. So that's an implement state arrow similar to like the Pro 700 had on it. Now, the reason this one's got the pause arrow is the planner hasn't been ran through as far as the frame calibration. So it doesn't know the actual work state of the planner because it is communicating via isobus. So that arrow is just gonna basically tell you, like on the Pro 700, whether it thinks the implement's gonna map or not. Just to the right of that is the satellite icon. If you wanted to click there, of course we're sitting inside so we don't have GPS. This is gonna tell us our correction source, our estimated accuracy. We could go in, look at the sky plot, we could see what satellites it's looking at, anything like that. But the main thing we're gonna look at here is our correction source and how far off it thinks we are. Just over to the right of that is kind of the cell and Wi-Fi communication. So these tractors have a built-in modem in them. That does make it pretty easy to run like an RTK Plus signal as well, because there's no longer having to purchase an aftermarket modem. We can use the one that's pre-installed. So right here, this tractor is using AT&T with 30% signal strength. Wi-Fi is turned off.
And it's 5 years free with the new tractor, correct?
Yep, so AFS Connect access, to get you the use of AFS Connect, so communicating over the air remotely, there's a 5-year subscription that's included with any AFS Connect tractor.
You're still paying for it.
It's included. Just over to the right of that, there's 3 little boxes. You can see this kind of exit here and the view and everything is kind of blocking it a little bit, but right there, those 9 boxes, those are the different applications. So we've got the gallery, we've got our phone, our radio, remote assistant services, and update manager. So why would we need a gallery? It's got a capability to screenshot through the display. So let's say I get to a certain point in the field and I'm having this problem and then it goes away real quick. If I wanted a technician to be able to jump on and see that, or if I wanted to be able to screenshot something out of my operator's manual that I can refer back to later, I would do that by holding on the clock. Above the AM, there's actually a picture of a camera. Kind of hard to see with this box right here that's just up because we're remote display viewing. But there's a camera right above the AM. So anytime if we just hold on the clock, if you want to go ahead and do that, Kelly, it'll then take a screenshot of our page, which will be housed in our gallery. So again, this box up here is what he hit there, and it's saying, well, do you want to punch me out? Because I'm watching your screen. Anytime I'm watching the screen, orange bezel is going to come up around it, and there's going to be an X in the seat on the screen, similar to like this location, that you can then hit to kick whoever's watching your screen out. We can't make any changes from here, so if I click on something, it's just going to show a hand on the display screen to indicate to the person sitting in the seat that, hey, I want you to click here, but I can't physically click the buttons. He has to do it from the seat. That's a safety feature. So if he were to hold on like the AM, it would take a screenshot of the page. Where I find this the most helpful is when you're looking at the operator's manuals, which are loaded onto the display normally. You can take a screenshot of the information you wanted there, and then that would be found in your gallery. So if we wanted to refer back to that later, it would be there in our images and we wouldn't have to comb through that display operator's manual again. So there's also this remote assistant services. Let's click there, Kelly. So remote assistant services would be if I wanted to have a technician sign into the CAN on these machines remotely. So if you called in and said, hey, I'm having this problem, let's check on it first remotely, make sure you got what you need before you head out. They can go on here, the machine must be keyed on, not running. It will tell you that if you try to do it with it running. But when he hits request remote assistance, it's gonna pop up with a warning, and then he's just gonna hit clear all faults and warnings, yes, okay. Then it's gonna spit him out. So go ahead and hit yes on that, Kelly. It's gonna spit him out a 4-digit code. That code is what the technician's then gonna need to sign into the tractor's CAN network and view things like software information, configuration, things like that remotely. It's gonna be a little slow, we're sitting inside here, so it's gotta connect to the server and copy back and forth, but it'll spit him out a 4-digit code. This one would be 7452, and then the technician could then sign in, get onto the CAN network of the tractor and check controller status, things like that. Sensor voltage even, stuff like that. So The machine does have to be keyed on, not running, to initiate the session. That's mostly because they can get in and see like engine controller versions, things like that, that could harm the machine if it was running at the time. So when the session is started, keyed on, not running, after the technicians kind of figured out what's going on, let's say I wanted to update the GPS receiver remotely, you could then start it so the battery voltage wouldn't get too low. So we'll just cancel that, Kelly. Kind of a handy tool. Now, with that, I talked about we can do remote display software updates, things like that. Updating the display itself and that modem is a little bit more challenging, and there's a little bit different steps, because of course, if I'm trying to update software on it, and then it shuts off, there's probably a problem. So, if I'm trying to update the display, there's a different process we have to follow to do that. But updating controllers, things like that, they can be done remotely through this step right here. So the next one over, just on the left of the clock, is the question mark. You want to click there, Kelly? So on here we can load in PDFs onto the display. So if we just put a USB stick in the display and then we pull the USB stick out, it's going to load in like documents and videos, a bunch of blank folders on our USB stick. The display's got internal memory, so it does not require a USB stick to be in to save data like our Pro 700 used to. However, we will want to put things in there if we wanted these operators' manuals, the tractor quick reference guide, stuff like that. We could dump those PDFs into that folder that is labeled documents or videos. And when we come here, it's going to say, hey, we see new documents. Do you want to upload them to the display? So that's just going to then save them to the internal memory. Kelly, let's just open up that tractor quick reference card. So he would then click on it and then hit open manual in the upper right. Just do this one because it's short. It's only an 8-pager. The other ones will all open too, but they're 500 and some pages, so they take a little bit to come through. So let's say I found something on here that I really wanted to refer back to. So just scroll to something, Kelly. Let's say I wanted to be able to come back and see what the buttons on my multifunction handle mean. It's a little blurry here. We got some signal problems just from it being inside. There you go. So if he holds on that AM, right now, it's going to take a screenshot of that page.
The camera icon I can't press while.
Yep, just hold on the AM button, like where it says AM.
I'm not seeing it.
Right on the clock. Basically right on the clock where it just says AM below where the camera would be. If you just hold there, it should take one. There we go. So screenshot captured. Now that is in our gallery view. So now if I pull this back up, I just wanted to refer to this real quick. I go to the gallery, I select that picture, and then you can even pinch in on the screen and just zoom in on the words so you can read what you wanted. And then at any time, I just click on my run screens down at the bottom. So the run screens on this display are solid down at the bottom. As he bounces between pages, you see those are not moving. They're staying down at the bottom of the screen. Super handy when you're making changes, unlike on the Pro 700 where you had to go back, toolbox, make my change, back, run screens, now I'm back to my runs. On this one, I can just tap down there at the bottom at any time, and it's going to pull me back to that run page. So, quick reference card, really handy. I prefer the operator's manual as far as looking information up. Of course, it's got more in it. But if I wanted to, let's say, look at the fuse block and I was having an issue, I could zoom in on my fuse block, take a screenshot of it, and then if I shut the monitor off and I want to come back to it later, just key it back on, go to my gallery, and that image is going to be there. I don't have to open up that document and scroll to page 200 and whatever again to find that. Also, Kelly, if we go back to the question mark, from here, let's open up that quick reference card again, just because that's a small document and it'll work a little faster. But there's a search bar at the upper right. So just like on a computer, if we wanted to search for a word in that document, like let's type in PTO on here. I think PTO is used like 22 times on this document. So right there where it says there's 22 matches, that arrow on the far side over here is lit up blue. So if he clicks on that arrow, it's going to pull him to where it used the PTO and highlight it. So if I'm looking for something specific in that 400 and whatever page document for the tractor operator's manual. It's gonna take a little bit of time to search through that whole manual, but it will search it and highlight those words. So if you're looking for something specific, it's the fastest way to find it in the document. Again, we find something we want to refer back to, just take a screenshot of it and it'll be in that gallery. The clock in the middle, pretty stationary. We'll change its time somewhere else, so there's not really a whole lot we can do from that other than holding on it to take the screenshot. Over to the right of that, which is kind of blocked right here, by that taskbar that's showing we're display viewing, is the operators. So you can set up different operators. They can have different levels of access, so most of the time we just leave it on the owner operator and make changes to the run screens and whatever else, but you can set those up as like operator preferences. Over to the right of that is the gauge icon. This is going to be where we're going to go to find very basic information about the machine: fuel level, depth level, temperature, hours, things like that. Basically, this information is what's going to come through into AFS Connect when you look at the machine parameters. There is some more in-depth information we can get that way as well, but this is just kind of the basics. If I want to just go, how many hours do I got on here? Click up there, it's going to be on the screen. If we click on over to the right of that is the menu button. It's those 7 boxes with the arrow up here. That's going to be basically just like hitting back on your Pro 700 and getting to all the different options to go into. This is going to be where you're going to go to make almost all the changes. Just go to the menu and then select what you need from there. We'll get into this a lot more here in a little bit, but we'll just keep going across that top bar. So the grower farm field silo up here is the next one over. It's called the operations tab, but this is going to be where you're going to go to set up grower farm field. You can preview your implement and your tractors that you have that it's selected for you, as well as being able to see our field if we had boundaries in here. So we can see we got a picture of the tractor on the map. If Kelly scrolls down a little bit on this whole page, it's all an Android operating platform, so it's very user-friendly as far as just scroll like you would on your phone. So as he scrolls down, he's going to see more information about the vehicle that's set up, which is, of course, just this quad, and then the implement that it's got registered to it, the guidance configuration if we had multiple options, what controllers it's seeing and what products are assigned to those controllers, a basic overview of what it thinks it's doing in activities. One thing that I do want to hit on is if we go back up, Kelly, to where that map was, there's an option underneath the map for auto field check. If we have boundaries installed in the machine, anytime the machine enters a bounded zone, it's going to pop up and say, do you want to enter Dad's South field? You're going to select yes or no. Auto field check is that feature. That's what that does. If you put your boundaries in here and you have auto field check turned on, as soon as I pull into that field, it registers that the boundary for the field is here, and you just cross that boundary, which means now you must be working in field number 1. So it's going to prompt you, do you want to change that in the display, yes or no? You can't hit no. That feature is what turns that on. Your boundaries will show up here where the tractor is in that little map if you have the boundaries imported. So it'll show you all the boundaries that are imported in the monitor as you zoom out in this little right-hand area. Again, that feature is going to be what's registering when you cross that zone to notify you that it needs to be changed in the display. If you've got 2 fields that are real close to each other, we have ran into some problems where if guys turn around and it thinks you're now moving into this field, so it keeps popping up, you can go here and turn that off. Back up to that top bar, there's that auto button that's grayed out. That is just our steering button. So right now the machine's not running, the steering system's not active, it's grayed out, that system is off. Once I have met all the criteria to use auto guidance, that steering wheel will turn blue, which just means it's ready to be engaged. And then when the auto guidance system is engaged, it'll turn green, telling you that it's activated. Now that we've went across the top bar, let's talk about the bottom a little bit. I said that those run screens are always there, so no matter what page he's on, Kelly, go ahead and hit run 3 down at the bottom. It's going to pull us back to that run 3 page. It'll take just a second here. But no matter what we're doing in the display, we could be jacking around with our hydraulic remotes, doing whatever. Oh shoot, I need to get back to my page and see which line I need to get on next. Just tap down at the bottom, it'll pull you back to that page. Also on the right hand side is our notifications area. So down here in the bottom, it's going to tell us anytime a remote has a timer active. It's also going to give us a brief overview of what the machine sees going on. So he clicked on it there, it's showing we're in road mode, which means our selector switch in the headliner is set to off. It will not let you apply in road mode if you have like an ISO implement. So like this planter right now running ISO bus, if I have that road mode switch set to off and I pull into the field and drop the planter and start to try to apply, it's not going to let it drop seed or product because it thinks it's on road mode. So we would have to flick that switch in the headliner, turn that off. This gets a lot of guys who just pull in with anhydrous and are like, I'm ready to go. Well, can you use auto guidance? Well, I don't know, I don't need to use auto guidance. Well, your road mode switch might be off, and that's locking you out. Also, anytime there's a timer active, like I said, it's going to tell us here that there's timers active. So we'll go over setting those up as well, but this is just like a brief overview of what it thinks is going on. Seeing the ISO bus system, perfect, that's fine. If Kelly reaches up and flicks that auto guidance road mode switch in the headliner, that road mode should go away, just like that. Again, that does hold a lot of guys up when they go to start to apply. First time of the year, they forget to flip that switch back to off, and it's locking them out of doing any application.
And something to mention about that, you guys that are used to the tractor, before the neck tractor, on those, you used to turn the switch on to disable your auto steer. Now you do it off. Somebody decided to do it the other way around. So when you're normally not wanting that switch to be active, and you're in the field on a Pro 700, now you want it to be active, it's a Pro 1200. So a new thing to get used to.
And this one is a little simpler to follow just because it does show you on the monitor that it's either engaged or not engaged. So right now it thinks he's in road mode or that switch is turned on. So with that being said, let's go back to our menu button, Kelly. So from here, the new display does a really good job of breaking everything out into tractor settings, implement settings, system settings, things like that. So first, we'll go ahead and click on our system settings. So he's in the settings tab here and then under system. And this is going to be where we're going to go to set up our date and time is the first tab. The next one down is cameras. So these tractors come with 2 cameras already installed. There's one in the front and one on the rear. So the front one's in the grill, and then on the 4-wheel drive it's above the rear windshield wiper. On front wheel assist, it's mounted on the side of the cab, pointed backwards. 2 cameras already installed, and then there's 2 camera ports that are left empty. So there's a plug in the cab that you could tie in and put 2 extra cameras on here. Nice part about this screen is it tells us our orientation, so if we did add 2 or 3 more cameras, or 2 more cameras in our camera 2 or camera 3, and we had to mount them upside down or something like that, we could flip them on the monitor without having to physically go flip the camera. Also, if he scrolls down just a little bit, there's these auto show camera when options. So right here you can have it automatically show the camera when you either put it in reverse or when you kick your PTO on or stuff like that. So a lot of guys that are putting one on the back of the planter or something, they want it to kick on automatically when they put it in reverse. This is where you go to set that up. One thing that I always check when I'm doing this is make sure you've got that window always on top checked in a reverse situation so that it's going to pull that up ahead of everything else. If you don't have that selected and you click on something else, it's going to put it up over the camera. But next one down is our display. So right here is going to be where you're going to go to change display brightness and volume. So you've got daytime and nighttime brightness when the lights are on versus when the lights are off. And then you can decrease or increase those separately of each other, as well as our volume. Nice feature that they're separate. Other than that, I mean, language, metrics, most of those are just going to be left alone. We may have you come in here sometimes to check like cam status if we needed to, or there's also some information we can get through here as well, but just looking at different controllers. System info is going to be where we're going to go to get like our display, our GPS, and our modem serial numbers if we needed to have that to verify something, as well as our software versions on all of those as well. So Not a whole lot in there we should have to mess with, other than really the camera and then our display settings as far as brightness, volume, things like that. Let's go back to that menu, Kelly. The next one down is our data tab. So importing, exporting data on these monitors, again, they've got internal memory, so they don't have to have a USB stick. When we enter or import a USB stick in, it'll show up in that little notifications area in the bottom right that there's a USB stick that's been inserted. And then from here we can go through, we can look at our information, we can import information either from a USB or from the cloud, we can export our information. There's also that inbox, that's going to be where files that are sent from the online account to the tractor show up. If I were to send my grower farm field to the machine, or my products that I set up on the computer, I could send them to the machine so I don't have to manually type all those in. So if he clicks on the plus button, it'll pull up a drop down of the information that's inside those folders, grower farm field, and then as well as task data and guidance lines, things like that. To delete things, we just highlight it and then push the trash can, that deletes it off the display. From there, we'll just go back to the menu. Next one down is our ISOBUS status. We can open that up. There shouldn't be a whole lot of changes we have to do here unless we add something different. So task controller's already unlocked on these monitors. We don't have to get that separate like we did on the Pro 700. Other than that, in here we can just turn those on or off, or if we had a secondary display and we wanted it to be the number 2 display on the ISOBUS system, we could do that here as well. Not a whole lot to go over in the ISOBUS setup option. Most of that will just be left alone. Go back to the menu. The very bottom one is our connectivity. So in here is going to be where we're going to go to AccuSync, is the feature where the machines will communicate with each other to show one task for 2 machines working in the same field, sharing coverage, things like that. If we wanted to look at our antenna strength or Wi-Fi options, we can do that here as well. Other than that, we can go back. So we went over that left-hand category. Now we'll kind of get into the main area, which is going to be under tractor. So any changes we want to make to the machine will be under that tractor tab. So our very first one is our settings. If you need to know the serial number or something on it and don't want to go wipe the plate off, it's going to be registered in here as well. So under tractor settings, it's going to tell you the serial number underneath the picture. If he scrolls down a little bit more, there's some admin settings that I'll hit on here. These admin settings are on that multifunction handle. There's the kind of paddle for up or down, and then there's a forward and backwards shuttle shifting option. Some guys do and don't like that, so if you wanted to turn that off right here, that multifunction handle shuttle shifting on the right hand side, I'll click on it so you can see the little hand over here. That's going to be where you're going to go to turn that on or off. So it will throw you into reverse if you're moving forward. It's supposed to do it gradually, so it's not going to be hard on the transmission, but it will do that if you're moving forward and you hit that back arrow, it will shift you into reverse. So a lot of guys turn that off if they don't like that feature. You can also set up a max ground speed and your max startup gears here as well. So if you wanted those features, they're here. Next one down, HVAC, we can look at, but there's probably not a whole lot to go over there. So from here, the system's tied into absolutely everything on the machine, from our radio to our Bluetooth to heating and cooling. I like the fact that they did leave it up in the headliner. However, you do have the option to make those changes here as well. So if we wanted to do it on the display, we could. The next one down is lights. Let's go to that one. So from our lights, the tractor has 2 light memories. So up in the headliner, there's a rocker switch with a light 1 and a light 2, and then there's a light with a circle, which is just the off button. But from there, you can select which light memory you want to use. So most of the time, guys will leave one as set up like all of their lights on, and then the other one will be set up with like the uppers off. Kind of handy for pulling up next to the combine, or you want to set one for like your roading lights, things like that. So we can also see the light numbers here and select which one we want to turn on. So let's turn on 5. As he selects that on the display, it lights up here, shows us which lights are on, and then if he wanted to save those to one of his memories, he would just hold on the memory 1 or memory 2 button, and it would ask him if he'd like to save that to the memory, whichever that he's holding, so that then when he hits it in the headliner, it'll turn on those lights to that setting. Super helpful here. If he scrolls down just a little bit more underneath of that, there should be our egress light settings, as well as our nighttime backlight settings for a lot of the in-cab lights. So like that A-post, the lights on the remotes, things like that. Egress light settings here, we can either have them off, only on at night, or on all the time, and then we can set our timer here as well for how long they stay on. The tractors are equipped with an automatic battery disconnector. So it's through the BCM on the tractor, but after about 7 minutes, the tractor will kick the batteries off. So that does allow us to use our egress light settings and still ensure that the battery does get disconnected. The 4-wheel drive still have a manual battery disconnect, but the front wheel assists do not. So kind of handy there. A lot of guys didn't really get to use the egress light settings because they walked over and flipped the disconnect and that shut them off anyways. But kind of nice. One thing that does mean is if we leave anything plugged in the cab overnight, like let's say an iPad or a small battery charger for electric grease gun, stuff like that, it will not charge the battery overnight, just once until that disconnect is kicked off. Another holdup is the receiver is powered on as well to send that data over until that disconnect is flipped as well. So if we update like a GPS receiver, we'll have to wait on that disconnect to flip to power it down and then start the system back up. But that's giving it time for like the def pump to run, and then it's also giving it time for the modem to send over that data to the online account or register with the server. The next one down is our configurable controls. So from here, there's 3 categories in our configurable controls, and if you click on that levers option, Kelly, there's our levers, our multifunction handle, and our buttons. So we'll start with the levers. As we can see here, they're color coded, so that follows in the cab to the correct color corresponding to the back of the tractor. So red is always 1, blue is always 2, yellow is always 3, etc. So if I hook my hoses up, let's say I put my lift into the blue remote on the back on accident, and I've realized that now, I can go in here and I can flip remote 1 and remote 2 in the cab so that my first lever over here still lifts the planter or lifts whatever I'm working on, as opposed to having to get out and pull those hoses and move them to the correct one so that I remember to hit the right one every time I want to lift. So if he just taps on one of those, it's going to say which remote do you want to assign. You can see it's currently assigned to remote 2. If he taps on number 1 and hits OK, it's going to move that remote. So now number 1 is where 2 was, and there's not one in that first spot anymore. You can only assign them to one location. Now you can unassign remotes, and that just means that in the cab they're not going to do anything and the light on them is going to go gray. So if it's gray, it's probably not assigned anything at the back, and that means if you pull on it, it's not going to move. The remotes here on this picture also have what I don't know how Case calls it, but I call it a bump stop right here in the middle. So it doesn't physically lock the remote, it just basically keeps it from getting bumped by something. So you set your phone on the armrest or something as you're going through the field, and the phone falls off. Well, I don't remember if it smacked the remote or not. Well, if you have those bump stops latched and you're only using like raise lower, it would ensure that they wouldn't accidentally get hit. So they just slide up in the middle. You kind of pinch them front and back and pull them up or down. They're just plastic. I guess you probably could overpower them, but they're basically just there to keep them from getting bumped as you're going through the field. Anytime he makes changes, if he's not happy with them, he can just hit defaults and it'll reset them to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right there, and the colors corresponding as well. So if we click on levers, and we go down to our multifunction handle, there's also 2 remotes on our multifunction handle. It shows you the picture of it and shows you where they're located. They come defaulted to 1 and 2. So you could change those to any other one that you wanted, but those are going to be remotes 1 and remote 2 from the factory. If you have a timer set and you hit raise or lower on remote 1 or remote 2, it's automatically going to actuate that timer. If you don't have a timer set, it's just going to send flow while you hold the button and let stop when you let off. Again, we can set those to other remotes if we needed to for something else. Click on the multifunction handle again and we'll go to buttons. So there is 8 or 9, depending on the configuration, of configurable buttons in these machines. So these buttons can be set up for anything you want, from turning up the radio to actuating remotes, anything like that. We do have our own standalone auto guidance button now on the multifunction handle, which is just the steering wheel, so auto guidance engage is not an option for these buttons. But as he goes in here, a lot of common ones are the ones on the multifunction handle. They're like 5 through 8 on the multifunction handle. A lot of guys will use those. One of the most common ones that I see is to answer an end of phone call, so you don't have to take your hand off that multifunction handle to swipe on the phone or click on the screen. We'll also use a lot to change our constant engine RPMs between 1 and 2. We have those 2 set and you can move between. That way when we're getting to a headland or something, we're slowing down, we can actuate our remote on the multifunction handle as well as change RPM, things like that. So, a lot of guys will use the lower ones, that 1 through 4 are down there kind of behind the remotes. If they have another camera installed, they can set that up to one of those buttons, so they can just tap that button and it'll pull the camera up on the screen when they're backing up to a tank or pulling into a corner or something like that. But a lot of options there as well. We can do the lights if we didn't want to reach up into the headliner, but a lot of options. So we'll just hit cancel there. Once you have one of these assigned, where it says unassigned, that'll change and tell you what it is as well. So that goes over all the configurable controls. The next one down would be our hydraulics. So we'll go down on the right hand side. And from here, the only ones we're really concerned with is going to be our rear remotes. We're not doing any auto controls. So on the left-hand area, we can see that number 3 and number 4 say C and D, and number 1 and 2, they don't say A and B. They've got this little symbol right here. That just tells us that those remotes can be actuated in multiple locations. So that's telling us that 1 and 2 can be hit. Right now, we know they're set up on that multifunction handle. But if I had them set up to a button or to something else, it would tell us here that, hey, these remotes can be actuated in multiple locations. If we want to edit a remote, we just click on it. And it's going to pull up all of our options for that remote. So we've got separate extend retract flows, our timer for extend and retract. The timer learn is going to be where you just basically raise it manually. It figures out how much time it's taking flow and then creates your own timer. There's a lockout per remote, so we can turn that on and it's going to actually show us a picture of a padlock over that remote. You want to just turn that lock on, there you go. And then right there, instead of being in neutral, that remote is locked. So that's completely separate from that little bump stop we talked about. This is physically locking the remote out of the machine so that it cannot be actuated. The bump stop is just keeping that lever from getting bumped. So you can still actuate it on a multifunction handle or somewhere else. It also still has the lockout up in the headliner as well that'll lock all the remotes out at once. Let's scroll just a little bit here. It's getting a little grainy on us. There we go. So one thing to remember is we set up our timers already with our time that we want, either infinity or 10 seconds, whatever we end up doing there. We do have to come down here to the bottom and turn on timer. That does get some guys where they, well, I set up the timers, I set it to 10 seconds, and now it's not doing anything. We have to make sure that we turn on our timer as well. So the next option to the right of that would be our motor mode. So motor mode is going to be a feature that's designed to essentially just protect hydraulic motors if we're running our vac or our bolt or something with it. We don't want it to lock up the system. So motor mode is a feature that's used to basically only allow flow one direction, and then anytime that remote is moved, it kicks it into float. So protect the system. To enable motor mode, we will have to put the remote in float and then turn it on. If you hit that question mark right there, it'll tell you that as well. So anytime there's a question mark on there, we can click it and it'll give you a little brief description of what it is. So in this example, he's got number 1 set up to infinity, or number 3 to infinity timers, or I'm assuming we could just enable motor mode and probably get the result and be a little safer. We can still set our extend and retract timers to infinity. Another thing that I forgot to mention on the previous page where we could switch around our remote locations, we cannot switch extend and retract flow from the seat. So we do not have to worry about that. Again, each individual remote, the menus will be exactly the same, so we just click on the different menu, pull up our different remote, and go from there. The next one down in our right-hand menu is our end of row. So again, similar to like the 700s, we could record a sequence and then push the button to play the sequence. But the next one down would be our engine. So from here, we're going to set our constants, and then if engine brake, and then our decelerator rate as well through this page. Transmission settings. The next one down. Set up your startups, sensitivity, load anticipation, that information through this page as well. The next one down would be our steering. The AFS Connect tractors have got 3 steering modes. So it's not going to let him change it because he's locked in road mode. But the steering modes essentially just increase the amount of flow going through the steering system. It does not affect auto guidance at all. It's just through the steering hand pump when you turn the wheel. So it will kick back to medium and then slow as it goes into road mode as well. But it's just designed to be able to increase flow as you're turning. Probably not going to be used a ton. Most guys are just going to leave it on medium. If you are coming to a point where you're spinning the wheel a lot, doing some turning, you may want to kick it into fast. It just decreases the amount of rotations of the steering wheel you have to go. I think on slow, it's about 3 turns of the wheel to go full crank left to full crank right, and on fast, or I'm sorry, on slow it's about 6, and on fast it's about 3 to go full crank to full crank as far as actual spins of the wheel. Auto diff lock, pretty basic. It's going to give you your engagement zones. Next one down would be PTO. So we've got our auto start or our heavy start, and then tire pressure monitoring, which we do not have to worry about on this unit. So the tire pressure monitoring system, you can add tire pressure monitors, which actually screw onto the valve stems, report back into the display, and record pressures. So you can do those on implement and on tractor. You just set them up and it'll have you go through and how many front wheels, how many rear wheels, and then you put the sensors on, generally starting left and moving right. One at a time, it'll register and link with the display to tell you tire pressure. It'll also give you alerts if tire pressure is above or below like 3 or 6 pounds over your set points, which you can manually set. So if you do have an inside dual or something that's leaking, it would tell you hopefully before it's too late. Let's go back to our menu, Kelly. So from the menu page, the next one over from tractor is our implement setup. So this one's going to be a little bit different because it is connected to the planner. So it's already pulling all that information through. But on this very first page is where we would set up our implement as far as what it is and what we want the machine to think it is. So if it's a dummy implement that we're just telling it we're doing tillage, we would tell it the make, model, enter that information. It's just trying to draw you an accurate picture of what it thinks the implement looks like, which really helps out with our measurements page. So we'll just leave it alone on there for now, but we would just basically go in and tell it what we're doing with the implement. The make just kind of assigns it a color, and then what model it is what's going to be named. So the next one down from settings is our measurements. The display does a really good job of showing you where the measurements it needs are and giving you a picture of what it thinks it's pulling behind it. So here's the measurements it's getting through this one. The gray boxes cannot be edited, and then anything that is kind of a white box can be. Again, these are going to be set up on the ISO bus system for this planner. So if he scrolls down just a little bit, there's a skip and overlap option there. That can get some guys if they're pulling a tillage piece that doesn't pull exactly right, or they want to overlap by 6 inches or a foot. They could set this up. Just remember, you'll want to check it and verify that it's not in there when you are pulling something different. So, can put overlap in here. Let's say I want to overlap 6 inches or whatever. It's going to automatically put that into your swath width and change that for you. A lot of these other boxes we will not have if we don't have an isobus implement created. So we'll just kind of breeze through those real quick and not spend a whole lot of time on them until we go back and look at the planner. Our controller selection are going to be any controllers that it's registering to that machine. You can add mechanical controllers as well. So if I wanted to tell it I was putting on a product, I would put in here that it's mechanical, and then I could tell it what rate I'm putting on so it would map it correctly. We won't have product delay settings or section switches if we don't have any of that either. So, let's go back to our menu, Kelly. And let's go to the vehicle implement configuration in the center. So the vehicle implement configuration is just basically what it's using to do that application. So it thinks that it's the 620 pulling the 2140. And then our switches is going to be, our work switch is going to be what registers that arrow is up or down. So right now on an isobus planner, we're going to set it to none, and that's going to use the frame calibration from the planner as our work switch. So if we were just doing tillage with raise lower on the implement as we wanted to be the work switch, we'd select that, scroll down, should be able to set it to EHR1. But here's our different options for what we want to trigger coverage essentially on the display. Also down below that is our system speed priority, what it's going to use for speed. Now these are, they move a little on you as you would like. Let's say we pulled in, we lost GPS, it's going to drop it down. It's no longer going to try to use GPS, it's automatically going to kick over and use, in this case, radar next, and then our wheel speed. If we wanted to go in and, let's say, kick off our radar speed, we could do that through here as well. In this case, we have a couple extra settings because we do have the planner connected. Let's go back to our menu, Kelly. So we went over almost everything on here. We got to go over our GPS next. So GPS is our lower left, our GNSS and guidance tab. From here we can change our correction source, change our GPS outputs. So if we want to export GPS off, we'll go through and kind of show you how that works, but that would be through our GNSS position output. So right here, there's just the default configuration. He would have to create a configuration. So he could name it whatever he's putting in. Whatever display he's going to export GPS to. And then he's going to go on and turn on whatever NEMA outputs he needs to export off. On these machines, there's several ways to pull GPS out of them. If you've got a monitor that's capable of getting on the CAN network of these machines, we can tie it into the CAN. We can go off the back of the GPS receiver, or there's another port inside the cab that's coming off of the modem on these machines. So that comes out down below on this machine, just to the right of where he's sitting. But those are different options for exporting out, and that's what he's selecting prior up where he selected the receiver serial port. So if we're running a planner with these, the best place to pull that GPS source from is directly from the back of the GPS receiver. Once we've got that set up, we can save these based on what display. So if we were moving a couple displays in and out, we could set up our configuration for that display and then just go back in and select that configuration at a later date. The next one down is is our AccuGuide tab. This is just what we're using for guidance on the machine. So our guidance system configuration, they're already going to come set up, you know, of course, if the machine's steering ready, it's going to come installed. The display on these is not an option, so you're getting the 1200 monitor on the armrest because it's tied in with everything else. The GPS receiver is essentially what finishes that system. So we could adjust our steering aggressiveness here. If we were steering with a different display, we could set that up here as well. Another handy thing is our GPS vehicle measurements. So right underneath the AccuGuide is our measurements tab. If we needed to import those into, let's say, a third-party monitor or something like that, we can get all those measurements here. As you can see, they're dark gray. He cannot change them because it's registered to the serial number on where they're going to be located. Calibrations as well through here. This is going to be where we're going to go to do our roll calibration. So the roll calibration on these machines, there's two options for it. There's the manual roll calibration, which is what we're similar to doing on a Pro 700 most of the time, where we drop a flag at the hitch and measure when we come back facing the other direction how far off we were. Or there's an automatic calibration, which is going to be where it's going to drive 400 feet, turn around, come back, drive it again, and it's going to figure its left-right offset based on how it was driving that path the last pass. The guidance systems on these are completely different from like what was on a Pro 700 system, so we don't have a nav controller anymore. That information is built into the GPS receiver. Just a completely different system made by a different company. The next one down on that right-hand menu is AccuTurn, so the end of row option, when we have that installed, it would essentially path out your turn at the end and use guidance to do that. That system works a lot better on these units than it did on some of the older units with the new monitor. From there, we'll go back into our run screens here real quick. So to get to that, we just tap on our run screens down at the bottom, and that's going to pull us back. I want to go over the run screens a little bit here, but first I want to show you kind of some more advanced like monitoring options we have through the monitor. So he's got his camera set up there just so you can see it, but let's go back to our menu, Kelly. And go to diagnostics. So I really like the way that the vehicle diagnostics page is set up on here. If you click on the vehicle diagnostics, our maintenance schedule's in here as well. So right here is kind of the services. If you click on each one, it's going to show you what needs done at that service interval. And we can change those if we wanted to as well, but let's just select on that 600-hour service. Really like the way that it breaks this down and just kind of shows you that information. Calibrations is the next one down. If we needed to do some of our more basic steering calibrations as far as mapping our sensor or calibrating our valve, we would do that through here as well as completing like our radar calibration. Particularly, I like the monitor option here. It's something we didn't have a ton of on the Pro 700. As we go through here, we can set up a couple things that we want to watch as the machine's kind of going through the field. By clicking the gear icon, it gives us all the different options on what we can look at, and then it just leaves them up there for us, so at any time we can go back and check those parameters or those settings if we need to. Really handy feature. I like that that's built into the monitor. So we went over a lot of like settings, how to make changes, things like that. Now we're going to be a little limited on what we can do from like the auto guidance setup and things like that, but I do want to go through those pages with you just as kind of like a refresher. So again, anytime, we'll just hit back to like run 3.
I don't know if it's gonna let us load and run 3.
It'll load in, it's just gonna be a little slow because it doesn't have the location. So from our run screens, if we wanted to, let's say, name our run screens and we wanted to make some changes, things like that, to edit our layout, instead of in a Pro 700 going back toolbox layout, marking our run screen, making all those kind of going through all the steps. On this one, we just like hold on the run screen we want to edit. So just hold on number 3. And it's going to pop up and ask him if he wants to enter screen editor. He's going to hit yes. And from here, it's going to show what he's got on that screen. He can click around to his different run screens and look at those, as well as all the user-defined windows or UDWs that are going to have a trash can at the lower right-hand side to basically delete those off and allow us to put stuff back. So, as a guy who helped a lot of people through editing run screens, one of the biggest pains is when a guy's messing around with his run screen, he accidentally clicks 2x6 map, and there went everything that was on his run screen, and now he has a 2x6 map. They changed the way that was all set up on here and the way that the screens are laid out, so now you can only put boxes in boxes that are empty, and they're only going to be able to fit what you have enough space for. So let's go to like run 2, Kelly. So right here we can see everything on here. If he goes ahead and deletes out, let's say, like engine hours, it's going to say he's going to probably have to click on the plus. It might not. Normally, the first time doing this, it's going to say you're going to have to create a default template, number 1 or whatever, because you can't edit the default settings. So from here, go ahead and click on camera. And this will be a good example of which ones are not able to be put there because we do not have a 1x3 or a 1x6 area open. So if you see something you wanted to put there that's grayed out and not capable, you just have to keep making more room to make it fit. So go to like GNSS and guidance, we'll walk through some of those. To create your layouts, let's put in like cross-track error. Now put that one in there. If I do something that I was not happy with, I can go ahead and hit that back button down at the lower right-hand side. And it's going to say, do you want to revert all changes or just the current page? We'll go ahead and do all, that's fine. And there it put engine hours back in there for us. So if we do make changes that we weren't happy with, we can just go ahead and wipe those back out. It'll put what we wanted back on there, or what was on there. We can start fresh again. So also down at the bottom, there's those 2 screens down here next to the X. Those are going to be our different layouts. So there's a generic copy already. If I wanted to name that, I could do that there, or make another copy of it so that when I edit my next one, I can always flip back to that one and it's still the same. Or I can just delete out that whole copy. So if I wanted to name it, let's say this is the way Joe runs it, I could name this layout Joe's, and then I could have somebody else's layout so that I wasn't messing with his when I wanted to change around my run screens. Also, if we click the X on that layout management tab, any of the run screens we want to name rather than 1, 2, and 3, like let's go to number 3. This is my full screen map, so I'm on number 3. I'm just going to tap on it real quick. On the 3 down at the bottom. It's going to say, what do you want to name this page? Let's go ahead and name it our map. And then hit apply. And now that's going to be named down at the bottom. Another thing that a lot of guys forget about from the user-defined window side is that left-hand area is scrollable on this display. We can see we can change that stuff around over there, but it is fully scrollable. So I could add as much as I want to that. Let's go ahead and add the UT page. That's a nice one to have if you're running an isobus implement. So the universal terminal 1x3. As we can see, he's got like wing downforce, vacuum, things that are specific to the planner that it's loading through as well through the isobus screen. But that UT window, if you're running stuff, is just gonna give you a preview of kind of what's going on. Another option is scroll, go ahead and click the X on that select UDW page and scroll back up. If I wanted to change the order of these, I could just hold them and kind of drag them in place. So if I wanted to move those around, I could do that right there. Another thing that I would highly encourage people who are running like a planner or something where they're going to have remotes in constant is to have the hydraulic remote status over there on the left-hand side. So let's go ahead and add that one as well, Kelly, and then we can go over it. Should be under our, oh, do we already have it in there? Scroll, oh, right there. Perfect. So just put that levers up more towards the top, if you could. So we've made kind of the changes we want. We could go through, we could label our camera page if we wanted to, or anything like that. Once we're done there, we'll just click the X at the lower right, and that'll save our changes. Now we can see that our map's labeled down at the bottom. What I talked about on that left-hand side with those levers option is it's going to show you the status of all your remotes. So if he puts one in motor mode, it's going to show a picture that that remote's enabled in motor mode. It's a little small, but just at a brief glance, I can look down and make sure, okay, I'm still getting downforce pressure. I'm still got my back fan getting pressure. I've got the status of my remotes at just kind of a quick glance. You can put that on a run screen as well if you wanted, but just quick over there. So I think it is on a run screen, but so it's not going to fully load through our map, but we'll go over this a little bit here, just kind of from this view. Actually, I've got a card, but I don't know if it's on the, let's click on the question mark, Kelly. There might be a screen here that shows us. I don't think there is on this one. Click on that quick reference card and open him up. And this one might show us here. Perfect. Go ahead and scroll down just a hair. So this goes over kind of the options at the top of the page, and then as he scrolls down, it's going to also go over those other options as far as what's on the guidance page as well. So if you're ever we went over them all today, but it's going to show you like the work switch or work status icon and just what those mean. As he keeps going, it's going to give you more of a description of what's inside of each box. So let's go ahead and go back to that kind of guidance screen that it had up there, Kelly. In the manual, I'm sorry. Let's just zoom in a little bit on that screen, just because this one will be easier to see. So at the upper left, we've got a compass that's red. So as we can see here, we're kind of off to the side of the tractor in this view. This is exactly what it's going to draw on your screen. When you pull up your guidance page, it's going to show you the tractor and what it thinks the implement looks like behind it. This really helps us solve a lot of your measurements are way wrong, because it's going to draw a picture of what the implement looks like, and if your measurements are all out of whack, the implement's going to look all funky behind you. So that kind of compass in the upper left is going to be your heading. So it thinks that we're at a 329-degree heading view with the camera looking at the tractor. If you tap on that compass, it'll turn blue, and that's going to lock it fixed behind the tractor. So if you're ever scrolling around on the screen, that compass is going to turn red, and it's going to hold at whatever angle you had that camera positioned in relation to the tractor. If you click on that compass, it's going to turn blue and bring it back to centered on behind the tractor, like the view we're used to on a Pro 700. Also, that little icon there next to it to the right just a little bit is just going to recenter it on the machine instead of being off-centered. our different views. And our map viewer down below that, we can save different angles if we wanted to look at the machine from a different side or something like that. Or the total view, which is the one directly below it, is going to kind of zoom it out to see the boundary and where you're at in the field. Going over to our right hand menu, that S icon with the 2 dots is going to be creating a guidance line. So that icon there, when we select him, we're going to get 2 tabs. There's going to be a new and a manage. So the new tab is going to be where we're going to go to create a new line, a heading, a straight. I really like the way this machine redid the heading. So when you click on a heading, it's going to put a compass up on your screen, and you can actually drag around that compass and set it to a heading if you wanted. Let's say a 5-degree heading, we just drag that direction. It's going to show you what those lines will look like on the screen before they're made. Or we can manually type in the heading, or we can just leave it at what it was when you clicked on heading, and that's going to be a straight line under the tractor. The manage tab is going to be going up to pull up old guidance lines. So we'll go into manage, and it's going to give us a list of all those guidance lines that we've made in the past under that machine in that field. The one directly below that's going to be boundary and headland. So as we click on it, we can either create a boundary or we can create headland passes based on the boundary if we already have the boundary in there. Down below that is our point or marker. So if we wanted to mark, let's say, a hole or a rock or something like that, that little cone would be what we'd select. And we could select whether it's passable, impassable, or it's a point, or is it a line. Go from there. The next one down, that it's supposed to be a picture of a tractor from above, I believe, but it just kind of looks like a box with arrows pointing left and right and forward, backwards. That's going to be moving our guidance line, or us on the guidance line. So as we open that up, it's going to get us nudge, trim, remark, and swath skipping. So we could remark or nudge left, right, or to current if we needed to as well. The next one down is going to be our layers option. So when we select those, it's going to ask us what we're looking at on the map as far as our layers are concerned, whether we're looking at downforce or singulation or just coverage, anything like that are going to be found in there. The next one down is going to be kind of our widget icons. So if I wanted to turn on like a light bar across the top of the page, I could do that through those 3 little applications right here. Down below that, we're going to have a field view again, and then we're going to have a zoom in and zoom out arrow as well. So we can do those manually with our fingers from that map, but those icons are going to be where we're going to go if we wanted to just keep ourselves centered on the map, centered on the tractor, and zoom the map in or out with a button rather than pinching the screen. Let's go ahead and go back into our run 1, Kelly. So from here, we talked a little bit about the light settings, right? So light memory 1 and light memory 2. Those are going to be something that I would encourage everybody to kind of go in and mess with and set to the way you want. But directly below that is our area counter, and it's got that kind of circle back icon set up. So if we wanted to, any UDW that's got that symbol, we can go in and that'll zero it out to restart the counter. One thing that I will state that we've had some kind of mixed reviews on is that counter will not count overlap. So if I'm putting in an overlap on my machine and doing double coverage on, let's say, 6 inches or a foot, it's not going to count that towards a second area counter. It'll only count it the first time. Again, there's that view over here as well of those remotes and kind of what their status is. And then let's pull up the quick reference card again, Kelly, for the armrest, and let's go over the new armrest. It'd be that other quick reference card, I believe. The tractor one. So from right here, we hit on the multifunction handle a little bit. This just breaks it down a little bit more into what the buttons, each symbol means. As we scroll down a little bit, it's going to show us kind of an overview of the armrest. So we've got those buttons behind the remotes, that 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons are those configurable buttons. Right here, which are located behind the remotes. So those are your 1, 2, 3, 4. Your 5, 6, 7, and 8 are up on the multifunction handle, and then 9, if your tractor's equipped with it, is down next to the diff lock. Down here on this machine, there you go, lever right there. So this machine in the picture's got the split throttle, but over to the right of that is going to be where we're going to set up our constant engine RPMs to engage those if we wanted to. We can also set those up to the multifunction handle, but that's going to be where they're going to be fixed. And then over here is a scroller knob, I call it. So there's some quick reference buttons there as well. We can see we've got remotes, that's music or media, phone, and then our HVAC. Anytime we click on those buttons, it's going to pull us to that setting in the monitor. Another option is this scroller knob here. So if he goes ahead and touches down on that, this symbol right here is going to come up, which is going to give us more information on where we want to look at and what we want to adjust. Another thing to note is anytime you click on something, it's going to highlight it blue. So really easy to adjust things this way. If I want to adjust like remote flow and I click on it and it highlights it blue, I can just turn that knob on the armrest, and that's going to increase or decrease that until it deselects or the highlight goes away. It takes like 5 seconds. So if Kelly pushes down on that round scroller knob right there, this menu is going to come up. And then as he turns that knob, it's going to kind of move around the circle. And when he pushes down, it's going to select. So go ahead and push down on that, Kelly, on the armrest. So once he goes through this knob, let's say he would select his remotes, it's going to say which remote do you want to select. He'd move on to the next one and select it. And then it's going to highlight that remote on either extend or retract, whichever one was selected, and he could then turn the knob. So let's go to the menu. And then settings and tractor, and go to our remotes. So rather than having to jump through here, there's also that remotes button on the armrest we could hit as well. So let's go to the hydraulic remotes and our rears. And let's adjust, let's say remote 1's timer, take it off of infinity. It's already down. Let's do flow or something. So I didn't hit on this when we were in this page the first time. But with these kind of sliders here in the middle, we can either select the arrow to go up or down, we can grab the slider and kind of scroll it manually, or as we're highlighted, you can turn that knob and that should increase or decrease that as well. So a little easier to turn the knob than it is to try and poke the button as you're going across the field. That works on anything that's highlighted. So you can see he did timer, he could do flow, any of those type of bars. Once it's selected and highlighted that kind of blue color, he can turn that knob and increase or decrease that. If you do wait, like go ahead and click on the extend timer. So he's going to click on it, it's going to highlight it, and then I think it's like 5 seconds till that timeout, until that highlight goes away. Also down on the armrest, there's a home button and a back button. So if you do get into one of those menus and it's one step farther than you wanted to go, there's a back button you can hit down there as well without having to reach up and touch the screen. Or when that page comes up, if you just leave it set for about 10 seconds, it goes away as well. There's that scroller option. And as he turns that knob, it's going to go to those different options for him. So let's go ahead and go to remotes and then push down on it again. Hard to push down, huh?
Not happy about it.
So, again, it just goes away if he doesn't select anything there as well. Our run 7 screen is always going to come set up as our ISO bus screen. So nice thing about ISO bus implements is no matter what display they're on, they should look relatively the same. So this one's pulling up the planner. Again, the machines are already enabled for task controller, so on the Pro 700s we had to purchase that as kind of an additional option if we needed to. With these ones, those already installed. What else am I missing, Kelly? Whatever screen we have up on our ISO bus page, so like on this one we can see any of these settings if we wanted to. If he scrolls down on that left-hand area to that UT window that we put on that page, you want to scroll down on your left-hand area, and now go back to like our Run 4 page or whatever screen we're running on through the field. The page over there on our left-hand area is going to stay the same as whatever's on our ISO bus or our UT page as well. So a lot of guys will run that for like a rate control module doing gas or something like that, or planners, but leave that up on that page as well so you can see that information that you want to look at without having to go back just to check and make sure it's doing what you want it to. You want to go through and set up that reverse camera as well, Kelly? So to set up our reverse camera, we'll just use this one as an example. We're going to use the camera on the back of the cab. We're going to go in Menu, and then we're going to go to System. And then on our right-hand side, we're going to go down to Camera. We're going to select whichever camera is our backup camera. So on this one, it should be camera 2. And now if he scrolls down a little bit and hits auto show when, adds reverse as a feature. Always show on top, and then select that auto function. And then scroll down just a little bit more and hit always show on top. Perfect. So now no matter what screen he's on, when he puts the machine in reverse, it's going to pull up that reverse camera that's mounted above the windshield wiper and throw it up on the screen until he takes that reverse. You can click the X on that camera up on the screen if you did want it to go away while it's still in reverse as well. So let's go to one of the camera run screens, Kelly. I think you had one on, there you go. You want to make that full screen as well. So he's going to click on that icon over here, make it full screen. Anything that has that, if you click on it, it's going to enlarge that. Some of the other UVWs have that as well. So as he clicks on that gear icon, it's going to pop up with the optional cameras that are online. And there's an option for camera cycling if you just wanted it to switch back and forth, or you should be able to touch the screen as well with those. On the Magnums, there's a port above the rear remotes to add in your 2 more cameras, and then on the 4-wheel drives, it's inside the cab to add in 2 more cameras, so we can get an adapter for whatever style of camera we needed to be able to add those. What else did you want to add, Kelly? So again, that A-post column is fixed, so it's going to show you like fuel level, depth level, RPMs, speed ranges, what gear you're in, things like that. But any fault codes or warnings, you're gonna have to find through the display from now on. It does show display information is very helpful on this when you select on a fault code. It'll show you the information about that fault code and some steps normally to check.
There's gotta be some but.
Does anybody have any questions to go over? Or?
Where exactly are those camera ports for the Magnum?
It's looks like one of those 3-pin power pack or power connector plugs, but it's a round black connector, pretty much right above the right remote side, on the back of the cab, kind of angled down. It's got a little plastic cap over it you just take off, and I think it's like a 7-pin or a 9-pin connector for 2 camera ports that are already wired into the back of the display. I know we have some in stock. I don't know about this location, but Birkey's as a total does, depending on which camera you have that you need the adapter for. That's the only holdup. So I don't know which style it is, if it's a Voyager, or if it's a cab cam or an ag cam, or
Basically, it's got a different connector on it, so who's doing specifics for the.
it comes with like generally they have like a 6-foot extension on them built in, so that gives you a connection point at the hitch. It is just depending on which camera you got, it's the only difference.
Can you run through, like, say, if I wanted to use the handle to lift my planner all the way up, how exactly you set that?
Yeah, so you're on remote 1 is your raise lower, and you just want to like get to the end, hit the button, raise the planner. Okay, so we go to menu, and then tractor. First, we'll want to check our remotes, so we're going to go and make sure that remote 1 is set up with a timer, and set our timer zone and our flow rate that we need. So you're probably already going to have this set for your planner. And then we would then go to our configurable controls. So let's say this is what we needed for timer setup. We'd then go to our configurable controls, change it from levers to our multifunction handle. And then we could tell it which one of these 2 buttons you want to apply remote 1. So in this case, it'd be the far one, farthest to the left. And when I would hit the up side of that button, it would activate that timer that's set up to raise the planner. I could also set it up on one of the 5, 6, 7, 8 buttons if I wanted to. But
Can you also unassign that button?
to just be nothing on these buttons.
Yeah, so like, say you got number 1
Yep.
and the remote, but
Yeah.
you're not looking at it when you hit number 2.
Yeah, so you can also, so go ahead and, rather than do that, Kelly, let's go into remote repair button 2 and set that to remote 1 as well. You should be able to set the same remote on both of these. Whoop, nope. You go back to the multifunction handle, and then where it says rear valve 2, change that. Set him to 1 as well. So that would be no matter which one I hit, the up side, top of both buttons should be raised, and the bottom side should be lower on both of those, no matter which one.
Also has to be unassigned.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Yeah. In his specific use case, if he was accidentally hitting the other one, I'd probably just assign them both. That way, no matter which one he hit, it's still gonna raise. But
Now, did you say earlier that if you have those remotes set to like constant flow, you would have to press and hold it?
no, so if you do not have a timer activated,
Oh, okay.
so a couple ways to approach that. If they're set to, if your timer is being used to activate a constant, so an infinite timer, then when I hit it, it would activate that infinite timer. If I don't have my timer on, let's say I just have timer shut off for that remote, as I push the button, it's gonna send flow, and when I let off, it's gonna stop.
Thank you.
Yep. Same with if I'm set to my rear remotes, let's say I'm doing an EHR1 implement, so I'm just doing tillage, my display doesn't know what it's doing, it's just mapping coverage, I'm just raising and lowering, but I want my coverage map to look right, I need that arrow in the upper left to go up when I lift, go down, that way it's keeping track of my acreage and everything right. For EHR1, I would want to make sure I have a timer set, and then when I push forward, the first click on the remotes should be the timer activation. If I push through that, it'll go into a float, but when I let off, they're going to return to center. that does get some guys. Also, pulling back, there's a kind of a detent that you'll hit, but it will return to center even if the timer's on.